Hello, everybody, and welcome to Security Tapes. We are today joined by Priya Mouli from the Sheridan College in Ontario. And what I'd like to do is pass you straight over to Priya so she can tell us all about herself and how she's ended up in security. Priya, great to have you on. Please tell us how you ended up here.
Hey, Ben. Here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, sure. I'll just give you a brief introduction. So I'm Priya Mouli, and as you mentioned, I'm the CISO at Sheridan College here in Ontario, in Canada. I have about 20 years of experience in the space of cybersecurity, privacy, risk management, compliance, and enterprise resiliency. And well, I'll also say more recently, I've also increasingly being involved in data and now AI governance. So, as part of my current role, I'm responsible for all things cybersecurity, and compliance. I also manage aspects of physical security, crisis management, and emergency response. I'm also part of the AI working group, and I'm a strategic advisor to the CEO and to the board. Before I moved to Sheridan, which was about a year ago, last January, well, yeah, more than a year ago, I spent close to a decade advising global financial services companies, including some of the largest names in Wall Street, New York, and technology giants in the Bay Area through my consulting experience in the Big Four, working with the Big Four. I've worked with three of the four Big Four. And through that, I've lived and worked in 6 countries, including the US and Canada. And my journey has taken me from working with the senior leadership and the boards of organizations to really help build robust and agile kind of cyber risk strategies and working with the day-to-day with the operational teams to build and refine them, to kind of build them from the ground up and continuously evolve them. And working in multiple countries has really given me the global exposure, and that really helps me to work in a multicultural and diverse environment by having a global mindset, by working and communicating effectively with people from different backgrounds, different thinking styles, and also equips me with being empathetic and adaptable. Personally, for myself, in terms of my characteristics, I am certainly motivated by challenges. I'm very ambitious, continue to be so. Many say persistence is my middle name, and I do strive for excellence and achieve perfection in everything I do. Some fun facts about me, I'll say. I write poems. I do use that as a stress buster. I've written about 35 poems and published them on global publications. I geek out on wildlife, especially predators. I don't know why. And I love learning languages. So besides English and Tamil, which I speak, which is an Indian language, I can speak a little bit of French, German, and Japanese as well. So you asked me then as to how I got to where I was. My path into cybersecurity was not linear. I graduated with an engineering degree back in India, and I started my career as a software developer. After that, so I did that for about 4 years, and then two things dawned on me. One is that I wanted to use my grounding in technology, and being a person that's motivated by challenges, I wanted to challenge myself with becoming a subject matter expert in another area of technology, but something that was upcoming. And so I picked cyber. And so that's what got me interested in cybersecurity. And the second thing was that I also wanted to be able to understand the intersection of technology and business. I had the grounding in terms of understanding how code was developed, how technology was architected. So I wanted to kind of use that and kind of propel me to do more in the tech space. So what happened was that it didn't happen organically. After my 4 years of software development experience, where I was with global organizations, I kind of did my MBA, and post my MBA, I landed roles with the Big Four consulting firms, starting with Deloitte. And from then on until now, I have continued to focus on technology risk, cybersecurity, enterprise resilience, and I cannot not talk about AI.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, what a lovely sort of intro. And it's funny, you're finished with AI, and today's about security, which we could say AI is involved in. But I wanted to start with a question about AI, really. Are you familiar with the term Luddite? Have you heard of that saying before?
Yes,
Do you know where it
I've
comes
heard of
from?
the word. Latte? No.
The only reason I bring it up is I'm from a place over in the UK called Yorkshire, and Yorkshire was known for its mills. Back in the day, we had our entire economy in the north was based around woolen mills, and basically AI reminds me, I'm finding a lot of things in security and technology, they're not new, we're just revisiting stuff. And AI reminds me of where the
Yeah.
term Luddite comes from, because there were a guy called Ned Ludd, allegedly, and there was a new device invented called a spinning jenny. Now, basically, what a spinning jenny did was you could take 8 weavers and you could sack 7 of them, and you could get one weaver to operate a spinning jenny, which operated as 8 weavers. So the big rich mill owners started getting rid of all the staff and putting spinning jennies in. And Ned Ludd and his followers used to go around the mills smashing up spinning jennies. And it's funny, I feel that AI is kind of the modern spinning jenny coming to the world. And I just wondered what your thoughts were from a security perspective. What would you say to anyone who's thinking about AI? I don't know what it's going to do to us. Should I embrace it? Should I be scared? What advice would you give to other people in security? It's a broad question about what they should do with engaging with AI.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Vin. And thank you so much for enlightening me there. I didn't know about that. So I would say with respect to AI, so like I said, I'm part of the AI working group here at Sheridan College as well. So we recently published what we called as the acceptable use framework or acceptable use guidelines for AI. And some of the things I tell individuals is that, and my team as well, is that I think we should embrace AI, but it's important to have some guardrails in place. So, which is why we put together some guardrails in place. And then we've started kind of, piloting some tools, right? Like a Copilot. We are a Microsoft, we are a Microsoft shop. So we have an institutional wide license for Copilot. So we kind of, wanted to start small, right? Adopt usage of Copilot. So with that comes the AI literacy as well, right? So we're taking a lot of focus and effort there. So I will say the guardrails to start with, and then start adopting in a small way, being very thoughtful and intentional on the use cases you want to solve for, right? Again, we don't have an in-house or a private AI model, but then for some use cases, we don't need a 500 billion parameter model, right? We can do so with a 2 billion parameter model. So I would say to start with, start on the use cases you want to solve for. See what you want to do with those use cases. Is it to gain speed? Is it to, repurpose individuals' roles? Start from there. Think about what AI solutions will kind of help you do that. And then look at the AI solutions that will help you do that. Of course, I should say this is a CISO. Do your security and privacy review. Make sure it's good, right? And then after that, make sure you draft up some guidelines that everyone understands in the organization. So we've done some roadshows with respect to AI literacy or digital literacy, so to speak, in terms of talking about how to use these tools, in terms of, helping community members get familiar with these AI guidelines, and then and then kind of advocate and really help them embrace the tool, right? Because I think when to your point, we should be adopting AI, right? Because in a few years from now, if we say no, we're gonna shut our eyes and not use AI, it's like saying we're not gonna use the internet, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm not saying start with a big bang approach, because if at all, if it were to fail, you don't want to have a tainted feeling about AI, right? So you want to start small, be thoughtful on the use cases you want to solve for, and then after that, adopt it, and make sure you're learning from the community members, right? Because the more you use these tools, the more will we get an appreciation of not only how best to use these tools, but also some of the risks, right? Like, for example, we all know about the hallucination effect. We need to be very mindful of that. So which is why a key component of our acceptable use framework is human discretion, right? Do not use AI for just decision making. Use it to help you accelerate and expedite things. There always needs to be a human in the loop. Anyway, I'll pause there. Did I answer your question?
It certainly does. Thank you very
I don't know.
much.
I'm very passionate about that, so I can go off.
We
on
like
a tangent.
that.
Perfect. So I think the thing that comes to mind when talking about AI and academia in particular is, how do you reconcile that sort of AI forward approach with the students and sort of academic rigor, making sure they're doing the work, they're demonstrating their understanding, but also preparing them for a world where AI is going to be a fact of life?
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate the question. So I'll say again, going back to our acceptable use framework, how we kind of, in the context of an academic institution, how we've kind of framed that is we put together guidelines guidelines for across three pillars. So one is for teaching and learning. So that's for our faculty, for our professors and the students. The other one is for research, how to use AI for research. And the third one is for the rest of us, right? Administrative employees and administrative functions, right? IT, HR function and every other department. So with respect to your point, Adam, two things I'll say. The first part is that with respect to using AI, how students can use AI, we don't want to decide on behalf of the faculty. We kind of, have left the discretion to faculty because I'll tell you this, there are these AI detection tools out there. For example, Turnitin, CopyLeaks, and GPT-0. They are AI detection tools out there. And there has been some studies, and in fact, this was published in Bloomberg. I think it was Stanford University, where a student was wrongly flagged as using AI for an assignment when it indeed was not true because the person was neurodivergent, right? Had a very different way of articulating and expressing their thoughts.
Sure.
Right. So that kind of, backfired. I'm just saying this, right? Like pulling, just extracting facts. So that was that. But the thing is, which is why, right? Like we don't want to put ourselves in the shoes of the faculty. So we kind of leave the faculty to kind of decide that. What we have said is that, use AI for accelerating, right? Like with respect to your assignments and all of that. In terms of your final assessments, integrity prevails, right? And if at all you use AI, full disclosure, there's nothing like it. When in doubt, check with your faculty and, disclose fully that you're using AI. So that's kind of, how we've kind of left it.
That makes perfect sense. Sorry to spring that on you. I realise now that might have been a slightly loaded question, but I think when people think academia and AI, that's the sort of question that jumps immediately to mind.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's a fantastic question, Adam. And I'll also share with you another recent example, right? Besides the AI detection tool, we are also exploring in very early exploratory phases of looking through AI tools that conduct mock interviews for students because we want students to be interview ready and industry ready. So there are these tools out there where, I kid you not, there is a digital avatar kind of, asking you all the questions, asking you all the interview questions, and he or she or it, depending on what you want to call the avatar. So that kind of, scores you based on not only your responses, but also your intonation, right? Your confidence in terms of how you're giving out the responses and your body language as well. So it is a great tool to get students interview ready. Critical thing from an academic perspective, to your point, in the spirit of inclusivity, because we have a lot of international students that we have at Sheridan College. One of the things that we really keep in mind is how do we make sure that bias is weeded out, right? Like, for example, not a lot of our students have English as their first language. Different people from different cultures. I think this is where my multicultural background kind of helps, right? Different people from different cultures have very different ways of focusing and articulating their thoughts. So how do we kind of, make sure we factor in all of that? So that's also something that we're exploring. And another thing I'll kind of share with you, again, very recent example is that, I was hiring to add some staff on my team, and there are these tools out there that listen to you when you speak, right? When, like for example, in a virtual round of interview, that listen to the questions and then provide the responses in easy text, right? That enable candidates to just, read out the responses in a virtual interview. So how do you kind of, be mindful of all of that? Because we did see that, we did have that experience as well, right? And I did share that with HR and the rest of my departments as well. And so the one thing is that may sound a little old fashioned, but then we need to go back to pre-COVID days and have every round of interview in person. Again, not to say that, we do want people to use AI, but back to my earlier point, integrity prevails, right? And in a cybersecurity role or for any role, the foundational knowledge is important. You cannot ask AI to assist you with the foundational knowledge. That's just my thought and opinion. Anyway, you asked me one question on AI. I have a lot to say.
AI is banned now. No more AI for the rest of the interview. Bring it back to security. So obviously, working with the Big Four, coming from that level of understanding, I often talk about a security maturity curve, and I feel you know what good looks like. You've been there, you've seen it. You've worked with organisations where resource and budget, it's just not a question. But bear in mind, part of the reason we're doing the podcast is we're hoping there are people that might be 50, 100, 250 user organisations who've inherited the role of looking after security and the challenge of being as secure as possible, but not having the budget that some of the people you've worked with in the past have got. And again, coming to work into the college environment, presenting a load of different challenges perhaps that you didn't come across if you were more corporate focused working for the Big Four, because you've not got just the one network, you've got a couple of networks to worry about, of course, the students and the faculty as well. General, what's it been like for yourself changing from having an unlimited toolkit in essence to having to think about the order of events in terms of doing your CISO role?
Sure, absolutely, Vin. Yeah, I appreciate the question. You are not the first one that's asking me that. I get asked that a lot. So I'll say yes. Yeah, I mean, I have been at organizations. Yeah, like I said, right, like the Fortune 50. I've worked with the Fortune 50 banks and technology companies through the Big Four. But I will start with saying this, right? I will say that adaptability is my strong suite, right? So when I joined the organization, or no matter, right, any organization that I join, the first thing I do is try to understand, right? Like rather than coming in and, throwing in whatever I've learned in the past, it's, coming in and unlearning and relearning what the organization is about to fit myself within the institution's context, right? The culture is different, the pace is different. Yes, we have leaner teams, we have tighter budgets, no doubt. All of the above are true, right? But then it's important to kind of, use that to your strengths. For example, I'll say this because we are so it is a double-edged sword, to put it that way. So in terms of what's good, I will say is that yeah, we have leaner teams and smaller budgets. So what that means is that it also gives me and my team the visibility and the opportunity to wear multiple hats. We're not only doing cybersecurity, we are responsible for privacy. We're responsible for compliance. We manage aspects of physical and IoT security as well. We manage our ERP environment with respect to security, customized, fine-grained access management for those kind of roles as well. In traditional other organizations, typically you have a different team doing that, but we kind of manage that as well. Besides that, we also kind of, have a huge role to play with respect to crisis and emergency response. It's kind of driven by enterprise risk, the second line, but then we have a huge role to play with respect to that as well. And besides that, we also do other things like any investigations that happens, right? Internal or legal investigations and appeals. Of course, our general counsel is kind of, the first point of the first line of defense in that context. But then we kind of, manage that because it deals with dealing with very sensitive and confidential documents and data. So I'll say it gives us the opportunity and the visibility to learn a lot of things. Now, that's one. And then with respect to tighter budgets, again, my view and how I approach cybersecurity is that, well, it forces me to be on my toes all the time, right? And constantly prioritize. So I'm just going to put it out there. So one of my key priorities this year, among a few other, is that not to sound like a doomsday person, but let's be prepared for a breach, right? Let's be prepared to see a ransom note on the screen. When we see that ransom note, what's our confidence in the backups we have and being able to restore and get back to business, right? ASAP, or within the RTO, within the RTO, RPO objectives we've defined. So, which is why I'm really pushing for, which is why one of my priorities is definitely strengthening our backups of our critical systems and data and performing restoration testing, right? It's just to be prepared for the doomsday scenario, so to speak. And on that same note, I think another point that may not work in my favor is that it's not as heavily regulated as the banks, right? And again, I don't know if it's a positive or negative, but I did have regulations on my side to be able to enforce controls when I did that in the past. But in the higher education space, we're not heavily regulated except for, a few privacy obligations, right? So keeping that in mind, I've had to, and I have adapted my approach to really focus my effort on strengthening, like I said, our backups and restoration testing, and going back to first principles, right? Applying a defense in depth approach. We just need to make it like harder for the hacker to get into. Like, what they say, right? Like when there's a tiger chasing you, you just need to be the faster person. So I kind of, keep that in mind, like from a technical standpoint. Now, from a people management standpoint, I really focus a lot of my time and effort in terms of building my relationships across the business, not only within the rest, but finance, HR, faculty. In fact, I just had a conversation with my dean earlier this morning. So with faculty, with research as well, to do two things, right? One is to demystify complex cybersecurity in very simple terms that make sense to them, right? To speak to them in their language. And the second thing is really to build a good relationship with them by hearing them out, right? Like by stopping to be a naysayer and hearing out what their business case is, right? Like what their use case is, for example. So what do they want to solve for, and hear them out, hear the challenges and the problems they see with this approach, and be able to problem solve and brainstorm together, right? You can always reach a middle ground. I'm not saying I do that all the time, but that's how you build your relationship, right? By not being a naysayer all the time, because I truly believe that cybersecurity is a business enabler, right? Because we live, whether we like it or not, we live in an inherently digital environment and globally connected ecosystem today. So cybersecurity is a strategic business enabler. It's no longer just an insurance coverage for the business. And my focus is not on just cybersecurity risk management. It's resiliency, being able to recover and bounce back. I hope that answers your question.
Certainly does. Resilience is definitely something that we're coming up time and time again now, and I think I'd go as far to say, I even made a comment today that I don't think I've ever believed that security is something that you can achieve 100% of. I just don't think anyone can be 100% secure.
Yeah, perfection cannot be achieved unless you have like all the monies in the world, right? Infinite resources.
Or alternatively, unless you don't do anything. I remember in my very early days, what kind of spurred me into this industry was visiting people. In the UK, when we went ADSL and broadband, people had changed how they connected to the internet, and all of a sudden, everybody could get on the internet quite effectively. And I remember going to see quite an older gentleman who were heading for retirement. He told us so, and we said, "Where do you see the threat?" He said, "I don't." And we're going, "Yeah, but there's all these things happening, and we could tell you now how we'd get access to your systems." And he said, "How?" I said, "Well, it's easy. We do X, we do Y, we do Z." He go, "I'm not connected to the internet, Vin, and I don't intend to." And we went, "What?" And he said, "I retire in 6 months."
Well, you can choose to do that too, but
And,
again,
and I thought, well, that's
there's
one way.
always pros and cons.
But it is that, and I think definitely, if someone were asking me for advice after all the different CISOs I've had the pleasure to chat to, and they said, "What would you do about being secure?" I'd say, certainly have a look at a good range of frameworks, aggregate them, do your very best to be the fastest person run away from the tiger, because that and then beyond that, I'd really be saying, then it's about practicing being attacked. It's about drills. It's about saying, "Guess what, team? That what happened today were a drill. Did you not know?" And then it's saying,
Preparedness.
we're having one next week, so be ready next week, and then drilling again next week, and then drilling again a few days later when they're not expecting it, and then drill and drill some more until you're at the point that when an attack does happen, that people know what to do, and it's not panic stations. Last thing you want to be doing is writing a playbook because you don't have one on the day you've been compromised.
Yeah. Okay, excellent point, Vin. I'll make a point there. So yeah, we do have an incident. We call it the emergency response framework, but we do have a cyber incident response as part of that procedure, so to speak. And yeah, we did do exactly to your point, right? I strongly believe that tabletop exercises need to be done at least annually, right? Like if not more often. I mean, and there needs to be an evolution to it, right? The first thing is with respect to tabletop exercise, to your point, it's really around building the preparedness or the muscle memory, right? So who knows what to do in a moment of crisis? Again, we're all human. When we see that ransom note, we are going to panic, but at least we've rehearsed before that we have some kind of muscle memory to be able to, bring that back. So we actually did 2 tabletop exercises last year. one for the technical and operational teams, and then the second one was for the executive teams, right? Because we wanted to make sure that everyone knows what their roles are. But again, I think that tabletop exercises should become more than just tabletop. Like you use the word drill. I think there needs to be an evolution, and I'm kind of, planning for this as well. I mean, it's still discussions, but then in terms of the next step of evolution, it should be more of a drill, right? More of an announced drill. You can say announced to IT, right? And then the next one, unannounced drill. And then the next one, have your tabletop, have your drills with your, actually start with your tabletop exercises, but include other partners as well, your critical vendors, right? Your third parties. Include your cyber insurance provider, include your breach coach, and IR retainer, contract holder, right? Include all of them, because everyone has a role to play when you see that ransom note. So I think, there needs to be an evolution and a maturity journey as well. It cannot just stop at a tabletop exercise. But I completely agree with you. It's around building the muscle memory. It's like doing a fire drill in your apartment, right? We do that like so many times a year. How
Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing that's kind of come out quite a lot from the various chats we've had is it's one thing understanding technically and hands-on wise what to do to bring resilience into your business and make sure you've done as much as you can about security. But explaining it to a board can be quite different. And it's about and I've heard some really interesting stuff recently. So I wanted to ask you a question really around that, which is, way back I looked at the CISSP and looking at risk and managing risk, reducing the risk. If I'm riding my bike, I could reduce the risk by wearing a helmet. I could actually accept the risk and not wear an helmet and just weigh it up. What's the chances of me coming off? I can transfer that risk. I can insure my bike. So when I stop to have a drink, if someone steals it, it don't matter. I can buy a new one. And
Yeah.
so there's all these different ways of managing risk, and you can use qualitative approach and quantitative approach. But what I've been reading about more recently is some really crazy approaches. And I've been reading about chaos theory, and I've been reading about basically how you can take theories like that and almost predict the impossible. Catastrophe theory. There's all these things that could happen. How do you model that? But there is a way of modelling it using maths, and I think it just fascinates me. You can take these different models, and then you can say to a board of directors, just so you know, I've looked at this and I've modelled it out, and the chances of this happening to us are X%, and if it does, it'll cost us Y money. But the good news is, if we spend this much, we can eradicate that risk, and you turn it into a business decision. So I just wondered, do you have any, the more wacky the better, but you can use standard ones, any theories that you use when you're sort of coming up with risk models? Is there anything that you do slightly different?
Yeah. Thank you, Vin. I will say in terms of the risk models, I do understand. Yeah, I'll take a step back. So qualitative versus quantitative. So I'll say for the most part, I have used qualitative risk analysis, and when I say qualitative risk analysis, I'm not saying just based on surveys, right? Based on surveys and interview questions and document review. I mean, I'm still doing, sorry, I know I'm getting into the weeds here, still doing a test of design and a test of operating effectiveness, right? Still doing that. But the thing is, like, from a qualitative standpoint, right? I have used quantitative, like, Monte Carlo simulations and all of that in the past. All of them, again, based on my experience, is very tightly controlled on the scenario you are drawing out or the scope of assets, right? So what I'm trying to say is that as long as you have your scope tightly defined, a quantitative analysis has worked for me in the past, which is why for the most part, I use qualitative, right? I don't know what I don't know. I don't know my blind spots. That's that. Now, coming back to your question with respect to how I model risk and look at, where I need to prioritize my resources and effort on is, like I said, so first off is understand what your digital crown jewels are in the environment, right? Your super critical assets and data. And again, it's not just going to be one, right? So you want to prioritize that and then draw out a defense in-depth strategy. And when I say defense in-depth, I mean, you get it. You've been in the field. So, network, application, data, I mean, the whole shebang. And then what I will say is that in terms of a risk model, how I plot out, the probability is, I know risk is primarily the multiplication of likelihood and impact. The other kind of element, the third dimension I will add in there is the contagion effect, right? The interconnectedness of the risk. For example, if application A were to go down, or if server A were to go down, these are the downstream applications that will be hit. And by the way, this is another adjacent system that we never thought about that will also be hit, right? So it's talking about the blast radius, so to speak, right? Because that kind of, in my mind, helps plot out the real impact and hence the recoverability, the restoration ability. So I kind of, model risk that way. And then surely enough, in terms of a model, nothing like a RAG score, right? Or red, amber, green, right? Because pictures speak 1,000 words, but make sure you have the underlying data and facts that support that.
Brilliant answer.
I'll also say this, Vin, in terms of the cyber spending, I know you touched on cyber spending. So in my mind, and I actually well, it's been a few months, but I did a board certification that covered not only corporate governance but also covered digital and cybersecurity management. It is said that the best measure of cybersecurity spending is not doing a peer benchmarking exercise like what a peer of mine spends versus mine, because every institution and organization is so different, right? So it seems like what I heard is that the only realistic measure of cyber risk where you're measuring apples to apples is your cyber insurance coverage or your controls coverage versus the premium you're paying for it. For example, if it's a cyber insurance, it's what your coverage is divided by the premium. And if it's your internal cybersecurity metric, then it's around the dollar amount of the controls that you put in place, or actually the coverage of the environment that you have, divided by your total cybersecurity spending. And based on, I think this was X Analytics, so based on a research that they had conducted for several Fortune 50 and Fortune 100 organizations, the multiple is a lot lower, or actually it is 2.5 or 3x higher for a cyber insurance provider. So yeah, the best bet going is the CISO and the internal team. Again, I'm not saying that just by myself. It's based on research and what I learned from that course. But that is, it makes sense in my mind that it's the only apples to apples comparison, right? Meaning your coverage divided by your spend, the multiple.
Yeah. I've got a slightly different question, and it's specific to your academic environment, really. And I just wondered what's it like? Because I'm guessing in your role as CISO, it's not just about protecting the college from threat actors outside. It's also been aware that just by dint of being a college, you've got a lot of bright young minds that are inquisitive, and you've got to consider what their approach might be to looking at internal systems. Does that fall under your remit, and does that give you any interesting challenges, shall we say?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, yes, we do have a lot of very creative genes in our DNA. And by the way, we do offer cybersecurity courses as well. 2-year, 4-year programs, a lot of micro credentials as well. And yes, sure enough, we have labs as well. So I'll say this. With respect to students, everything is BYOD, so we do not issue laptops and devices to them. It's bring your own device. However, yeah, they still get a Sheridan account. So we're still responsible for protecting and securing them. Now, in terms of my experience, so far, I've had a very good experience where students have actually reported vulnerabilities that they have spotted, and we make it easy for them, right, to reach out to us and to be able to report on vulnerabilities. I think the self-disclosure, all that matters as well, right? Like I like to say, cybersecurity is a team sport, right? The CISO and the team cannot do it alone. We need everyone to participate. So we actually had a student actually report something on a website of ours, and we actually received that well, right? And the student was also helpful in the sense that I think the student was kind of took it up as a project because they're wanting to get industry ready as well, right? So they provided us all the information saying, this is the video, by the way, this is how you fix it. I'm like, oh, this is so nice, right? Well, I can take it as a negative as well, saying, oh, how come I missed that, right? Yes, sure enough, that was the initial feeling, but then we learned together, right? So what we did was that, yeah, I'll kind of finish. What we did was that we actually invited the student to meet with me and meet with my CIO, and we actually spoke to the student about, how they came about that. and we gave a pat on the back, positive reinforcement, right? We recognized the student, we provided a few, swag, and then we also wrote an endorsement and a recommendation letter that the student could use for jobs in the industry, right? So that, and then we gave a gift card and things like that. And we also made sure that his professor and dean up to the highest level are aware of the brilliant work that the student did. So it's kind of, you can say, like a bug bounty, but then not really, right? So we've had a student report such a thing, and it's good.
Yeah, amazing. I think the thing I would ask is, do you have an official bug bounty program, or is this just like an ad hoc thing where it hadn't necessarily been considered, and then suddenly you're having to think about like safe harbor stuff and making sure it's handled right?
Yeah. So no, we do not have an official bug bounty program. But then we kind of got a reach out from a student about this, and then that's when we started exploring this, and we did this on an ad hoc basis. But then my action item working on that is to see if we can institute a bug bounty program, right? That's one. And the second thing is to also make it easier for responsible disclosure of issues and vulnerabilities, right? So right now, we do have our contact points listed, but then how do we make it easier for them? For example, can they submit a ticket? Like, does it get directly punted to us, right? And things like that. So I'm trying to make the process easier, not only for students, but for anyone to be able to report.
Absolutely. And I think sort of not getting too bogged down in the paranoia of it, because I think if you don't have an official bug bounty program and you've got a presence out on the internet and people are looking at your organization, your stuff, and they're trying to report stuff, it's difficult to find that that balance between, is this an incident, is this an extortion thing, or is this someone out there researching, sort of hedging their bets, trying to carve out a living with this kind of stuff, and having the process and the internal vocabulary and setup to be able to triage it properly without going off the deep end.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I agree, Adam. Yeah.
Another thing I just wanted to bring up as well is you recently won an award, Top 100 CISO Award, I do believe. And I just wonder how you felt about that, because I tell you what struck me, having been aware of the award before, and knowing actually somebody we're off to see very soon who's on that list, knowing them already, and they got the award as well, which was nice. One thing that sort of kind of jumped out for me was Sheridan College, if you're not from Canada, isn't necessarily something you'd be aware of necessarily. When I looked at the list of the top 100 CISOs, there were a lot of companies I'd said, well, I'm not surprised they're on. I mean, I've heard of them, they're gigantic. And I just think that makes it kind of doubly impressive to me that you have found yourself onto that list. Would you care to tell us more about that? Because it's quite an achievement when you think of top 100 in the world. So pretty good.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you so much for your kind words. Yeah, I will say yes. I mean, I was very honored to receive that award. And I think I'll say this, right? So, okay, I'll probably provide some context and then talk to you about how that award might have come about. I mean, it came as a surprise to me as well. I had no idea. I did get an email a couple of weeks earlier, saying that it's embargoed, and I was pleasantly surprised when it came out. So I'll say this. So when I moved, this is kind of a personal story, and I think I will mention this to provide the context. So I moved. I was born and raised in India, like I said. I have my grounding there, my foundations there. I did my engineering, my software development there, and I moved to North America. So first to the US, and then relocated to Canada. So I moved to North America in 2014, and when I moved about 10 years ago, I was very excited about living the American dream, because my assumption of living the American dream and living in the Western world was merit will solely take you to the top, will solely prevail without bias. And then I relocated to North America, and then I did watch and observe a few months, and no, I did not have the best and the fastest career path, and regardless of whether I met my performance objectives or not, in certain cases, I also exceeded my performance targets. So like I said, I'm very ambitious. Like I give it my all at work, right? But again, I mean, the truth, I think back to your point on the women in cybersecurity, I am, believe it or not, yeah, I am an Indian colored immigrant woman, all of the above. So yeah, my career journey was not the fastest, right? But then what I did was that, I did not give up. In fact, I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't exist even in the Western world, right? Like where merit solely prevails, like without any bias. So what I'm going to do is that I am going to double down and give it my all to be able to change the game here. Right. And it did not happen naturally because initially when I moved to North America, no, I did not have the public persona. I did not have the LinkedIn brand. Right. So I was not a public speaker. I was not being invited to conferences. This was about 10 years ago. Right. So I had to build that. What that called was for two things. One was persistence in not backing down, right? In embracing failures and learning from them. And the second thing was to push myself outside my comfort zone. So what I did was that I did submit to a lot of conferences, a lot of speaker proposals, and I'll be vulnerable here. I've gotten a lot of rejects, right? So I've done that because I wanted to build a public persona and a brand to be seen as a cyber security and as a cyber security leader and subject matter expert, and use the brand to not only spread awareness on cybersecurity risk, both current and emerging topics, data, AI, but also kind of use that to advocate more for DEI. And for that, I had to fundamentally build a brand. So that's what got me submitting all these proposals. And then over time, over a few years, it happened. And then what happened was that I got to a point where I was frequently invited to chair and speak at conferences. Again, I'll say that with humility, I've had the opportunity to be invited to global conferences such as ISACA, ISC Squared, IAPP, and so on, to be able to speak about these topics and also advocate for DEI. So that's one part of what the award criteria was. Another part was around also giving back to the community. Like I said, I just shared one of my stories with you. I have a lot more stories. So it's about really sharing your lessons learned with the younger generation, because I see a lot of smart people, smart kids, right? And I think at this stage in my career, and it started a few years ago, I want to be able to give back and pay it forward to the community. I want to see younger people accelerate their careers, right? And it just gives you a sense of satisfaction, and it's very rewarding and fulfilling. That's another part of what I do. Another part of what I do is outside of being active in the industry, I also mentor and coach a lot of individuals in terms of not only doing the elevator pitch in terms of building their soft skills, but also helping them with respect to resume writing. I'm sure you can use AI for that today, but human discretion too helps, right, with the resume writing, but also helping them break into the cyber career, because there's a lot of interest in the cybersecurity world. So I kind of do all of that, and I also I'm part of the advisory board for a number of organizations in terms of advising vendors on what the future of cyber is. So again, all of the above I think led to this, but I will stay true to my values. I did not get here alone, right? So I will say I am very thankful and grateful to my support system and the community, including my family, my friends, my mentors, and more importantly, my team and the organization. Like I couldn't do anything without my team. So I owe it to all of them.
That's just an amazing story. For me personally, I'm going to be selfish more about me. And what I love about the podcast, what the aim of the podcast is people who are not quite where you are and hearing where you are and what they get from that. They could be another CISO. They could be, who knows where this podcast is going to find. Hopefully it finds itself in front of a young person that's not been presented with great opportunities in life, that's not had the best start in life. And maybe it's you, and maybe the takeaway from what you've said, whether it's fair or not, said another different conversation we could get into, but it's your reaction to your situation. Unstoppable, inspirational, and getting there makes the award worth 10 times as much to me. And I think that if that doesn't inspire younger people watching this, I don't know what will. And older people as well, because we're not ageist here, thankfully for me. But seriously,
No.
that's an amazing story, Prior, and it's a great reaction to adversity to fight twice as hard. Whether you should have to or not is a different conversation, and we're going to be touching on that when we do our Women in Cybersecurity. There's lots that I want to know and find out about, but that's a different podcast. We won't hijack that one. But yeah, no, I think that award, knowing what you've just told me there, means even more when I see your name up there with everybody else. Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Vin, for your kind words. See, like I said, persistence and resilience does not matter only in cybersecurity. It's also personal resilience, right? Like being able to continue to forge ahead and push boundaries. And we are always better together.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much, Vin.
Perfect. And on that note, I think that might be a good place to leave it for today. Priya, thank you so much for having come on the security tapes with us. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your experience, and hopefully have you back on the cast sometime very, very soon.
I've already scheduled it. I've already scheduled Priya's next appearance. Um, and that will be very soon. But no, yeah, Priya, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. Very interesting. And as I say, very inspirational. And yeah, just one last point, actually. Anybody who feels they'd like to reach out and talk to you, are you happy for them to come and connect on LinkedIn and connect that way?
For sure, yes. Yeah, absolutely, yes. That's the power of networks.
It is indeed. Right, great stuff. I look forward to seeing you very soon. I think, just for the record, it's going to be around October time, but I'll be back to you with further information on that. And we will be seeing you on the security tapes again. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Adam and Vin, for having me. This was a pleasure. Very interesting. I learned a lot as well.
Pleasure.